Right now, the Bank of England base interest rate of 0.1% does not favour those who want to save, but more those who wish to borrow, spend and invest. So how do we make the most of our savings? Well, one of the key things that we need to consider here is inflation. In case you're not sure what inflation is, this is basically how much the price of goods rises over time. So how much you can spend with the money that you have. So for example, if there was a rise in inflation of 1%, then the amount that you could buy for your money would reduce by 1%. So this is why it's super important to consider it in our saving methods. So there's a couple of different methods of measuring inflation. There's Consumer Price Index CPI and Retail Price Index RPI, and there's another one which I'm not going to go through today. Just to keep things simple, we're going to consider CPI for this particular one. So in the latest figures published by the ONS, the inflation rose by 0.4%. Also, just so you can see how important inflation is to consider in the context of savings, we can see here on this graph by the BBC that a loaf of bread in 1989 was 49 pence to buy, and then in 2019 it's now £1.9. So it's risen by 60p over the last 30 years. While that might not seem much, it really does add up, especially if this is 60p each time you buy it. Every time, if you buy it like every week or every couple of weeks, that 60 pence can add up. And this is why we have to consider this in our saving methods. So the first thing to be aware of here is that if the method that you're using to save your money is not beating the rate of inflation on average, then you are losing money in real terms. So i.e., you might be getting money from your saving methods, but the amount that you can buy with the money that you are getting is reducing. So this is why you really need to consider how best to save your money. So obviously there's a lot of different savings accounts here, and over time, savings accounts generally have been perceived as a very safe option for your savings because it's protected. Everyone knows what a savings account is. You put your money in, it's safe there, and you get some interest on that. The problem with savings accounts at the moment is that interest rates are so low that for the most part, inflation is beating the savings rates. Now, I'm going to throw up a bit of a video of some kind of different savings accounts that you can get and that maybe you have at the moment, and one's recommended by Money Saving Expert, which is a great website to go to for some ideas on different accounts and things, and they've compiled all of the savings accounts and cash ISAs as well, which I'll go into very shortly, into one place. So as you can see from here, the vast majority of the savings accounts range from about 0.5 up until kind of 1%. Obviously they all have advantages and disadvantages, and some you can't withdraw so well, some you can withdraw really well, and some your money is stuck in there over the long term. So why is this a problem? Because if your interest rate is fixed at 1%, for example, inflation varies each month and each year. So the target rate of inflation that the Bank of England aims for is 2%. So if your savings account is not getting anything above 2% long term, then you're probably going to be losing money every time. So this is why I don't think that savings accounts are a great place to invest your money, certainly for growth over the long term. If you're looking for an emergency fund, somewhere to store it, somewhere which is easily accessible, then savings accounts are really good. Now, what alternatives are there to different savings accounts? So obviously there are cash ISAs. So this is a individual savings account where your money goes in, similar to a savings account, but it's a completely tax-free way to save your money. With a cash ISA, similarly, they also get interest rates, same as with a savings account, but like you can contribute more and kind of save on the taxation, which is one of the benefits. Again, in terms of the interest rates though, they're not great. They are slightly better for the most part than the savings accounts. And again, I'll put some kind of video footage on the screen of some examples of this. But once again, if your savings account interest rate is not beating inflation, then you are losing money in real terms. So for example, if we take the average of a cash ISA and the average of a savings account, from this list I can gauge that the savings account roughly, the average interest rate is about 0.5%, and the cash ISA is roughly 0.6%, 0.7%. So let's say, for example, even just for this month, you have most of your savings in a savings account and you get a 0.5% interest. Inflation, so the CPI is 0.9%. So this means, even just assuming that everything stays the same, over the next year, you're going to lose 0.4% of everything that you save. So your savings, while you're saving money, you're actually losing money, if that makes sense. And equally with the cash ISA, if you save that and everything stays the same throughout the whole thing, then your savings decreases by 0.3% in real terms, in spending power. So this is absolutely incredible. I don't think this is necessarily thought of by many people, and they just see this as a great place to save the money because it's safe. But if you prioritize safety, then your savings are actually losing money in terms of their spending power, especially as where we are now, inflation is probably likely to increase as we move towards a recovery and people start spending more. Then the inflation rate is probably going to increase, so your savings rate is going to go even worse. What alternatives are there to savings accounts and cash ISAs? Well, you have the premium bonds, which is personally my preference for saving my emergency fund because it's safe, it's protected under FSCS, same as the savings accounts and the cash ISAs, but the rate is 1%. Now, when I say 1%, you don't actually get an interest rate on what the amount that you save in there. But basically how it works is that you have a chance each month of winning a certain amount of money, up to £1 million. And your chance of winning basically increases the more that you have saved. If you don't have too much to save, then this is probably not going to be a great place to have your savings because it's just hardly going to rise. You're not going to get anything and you're going to struggle and you're going to be even worse off. But I always like it because you always have that chance of winning the million. I mean, it might be really slim, but you always have that chance. So that's why I personally like the premium bonds, but it's not for everyone. And there's a really good tool here which can show you how much you would be likely to win on the premium bonds to make it so you can see whether it's kind of worthwhile your investment. As you can see, over time, people are kind of steering away from cash ISAs. The number of cash ISA accounts is kind of dwindling down, as you can see on this graph here. And again, what alternatives are there to this as well? My personal preference is a stocks and shares ISA. For example, if you have a stocks and shares ISA and you put it into a passive fund, like an ETF, or an index fund, i.e. just tracks an index. So for example, if you track the S&P 500, which is the largest 500 companies in America, on average, that has returned 8% year on year over the long term. So if you're comparing that to the rate of inflation of currently 0.9%, that would be an average gain of 7.1% returns each month. And obviously these are not guaranteed. There is more risk associated with the stocks and shares ISA, of course, but also the reward is a lot greater. So in terms of your savings and what you want to do with it, I guess it depends on how much you want to risk, what your risk tolerance is, and also what the rate of inflation is, because once the interest rates start going up again, then potentially they might become a better investment. But I guess that's something to monitor and just to bear in mind. So I hope that this video has been useful and given you some food for thought in terms of whether you're going to get a savings account, whether you're using a cash ISA, and whether you're actually making the most of your savings. And I will see you in the next one.